Hello and welcome back to the Wheel Talk podcast. My name is Abby Mickey and I am here with friends to talk about women's professional road cycling, everything going on in the world of women's professional road cycling. Gracie Elvin, Georgie Howe, Loren Rowney are with me today. Gracie Elvin, hello.
Hi. I've just finished off my little portion of my fantasy team name. I've just had some Tony's Chocolonely chocolate. Feeling pretty happy about that right now.
Very good. Loren Rowney, hello.
G'day, everyone.
Do you want to share with the class what t-shirt you're wearing?
I mean, I wish I could pronounce it right in French, and I'm going to have to look. Tout le monde, Georgie. I feel like you're someone who can speak a bit of French.
Latin bag.
Le monde regarde le sport féminin.
Sport féminin. Everyone watches women's sport, and it's true.
And Georgie Howe.
What's up, team? I'm ready to put my ranting pants on and get this show on the road because I got a lot to say.
Yeah, we only had one race over the weekend, the new Copenhagen Sprint, but my goodness, did it give us a lot to talk about. We have coming up the Giro d'Italia Women is the next race on the calendar, and actually next week we have a really special episode. Matt Deneve is going to audiobook style read his latest piece about iliac artery endofibrosis. So we've got a little break in the racing, and Matt wrote this incredible piece. It took him a really long time to write. And so I thought, what better time for him for as long as it takes for him to read it, we can listen to his dulcet tones talking about iliac artery endofibrosis.
Such a great idea. Thanks for doing that, Abby, as well, because
I mean, I feel like people don't read much anymore, you know?
Yeah, for people who don't consume
Have the option.
that sort of content, like the short bites, the deep dive can be hard, but it's a really important topic. And actually, I'm going to send it to my colleagues because even within our agency, I was in the office yesterday and I was telling one of the guys about it. And then he said, actually, at the moment, I think we've got 6 clients who are looking into that. And it's expensive, the surgery. So depending what insurance you have as well, you could be out of pocket 30,000 euros. I think I was looking at the table that one of my colleagues was showing me. So it's more prevalent than we realize.
And it's also very team dependent. With you do get the support to actually get the surgery done.
Yeah.
So it's when we see riders who are coming back from that, they are the fortunate ones who do have team support where the contract gets held, team supports them through their recovery and trust that they'll get back, but it's not the case for everyone.
Yeah, it was more affordable not that long ago as well. So that price jump has been quite significant in the last maybe 5 years, I think, just because of that prevalence. But Matt's really good at the deep dive articles. I went into the deep one today that he reposted from a couple of years ago about the UCI overlord, and it was so good. I was just really enjoying it. I had a sleeping sick baby on me, and it was like such a nice way to just use that time today.
Yeah, he really does. He does such an amazing job with the deep dives, and I just miss his voice being on the pod. It was so great to have him on the podcast a couple weeks ago, and I was like, okay, this is the perfect opportunity to fill people's ears with Matt Deneve and also get this incredibly important topic in front of people's brains. So that's next week's episode. But today we have our own rants. Yeah, our own rants to rant about. The weekend we had the Copenhagen Sprint, the inaugural edition of the Copenhagen Sprint, a one-day 151 kilometer long race that was very flat and came down to a bunch sprint. I don't think we're going to talk too much about the actual racing and tactics there. We'll definitely dive into a bit of it, but the biggest talking point coming out of the race was the safety. Lorena Wiebes won the race convincingly by a ton, ahead of Elisa Balsamo and Chiara Consoni. So very much a sprinter's classic. Kind of fun to have a one-day race thrown into the middle of stage race season, I thought. I feel like we have all these really great one-day races in the beginning of the year, obviously with the classics and in the Italian races and stuff. And then we have like one random World Tour one day with GP de Plouay at the end of the season. But I love a one day. So it was kind of cool that this race was added to the calendar, but there was a lot of it that left the riders disgruntled for good reason. So we're going to talk about safety today. I think it's going to be the bulk of the pod. After the race, even Lorena Wiebes was critical of the UCI, the fact that they are trying to, in the name of safety, making all these regulation changes. We talked last week about the handlebar rule. There's this new gear restriction going into play in August, and yet we had multiple really horrendous crashes in Copenhagen Sprint because of poor markings on the road. There was a lot of road furniture and poorly marked road furniture. There wasn't enough people signaling where islands were. At one point, they came in out of a 90-degree turn. Literally, there was like a traffic island and poles on the road just with witches' hats on top and no one signaling that they were there. So we saw a lot of really big crashes. Blanca Voss, Georgia Baker, Eleanor Backstead, Daria Pikulik, fresh off of an injury coming back into the peloton, all riders who were victims of these crashes. And yeah, even Wiebes, who won the race, her first response after winning was that it was too dangerous. The general consensus from riders after the race was that they really enjoyed the race itself and the fans and the addition to the calendar, but that there was a lot of safety measures that weren't taken that could have the crashes could have been easily avoidable. So Georgie talked to some riders. She's our inside scoop. You want to give us like some bullet points from what they had to say?
Yeah, sure. I mean, basically the general consensus is it's not good enough from the UCI. The riders are frustrated that their needs are not being met by way of equipment choices. They're being regulated in that respect, and that when they do actually go in to do their job on race day where it matters, the UCI don't. They're not cognizant of those dangers that they are facing on the road. So, like, I was talking to riders where you've got poles that are 1 meter high. Fine if you're at the front of the peloton, but if you're 20 riders deep, and this is a peloton of 120, maybe. I think it's about that. It's a World Tour race. Like, you're not seeing those poles. And so, yeah, you can even call them out, but like, there's no way you're getting around that. And it just takes one rider to clip a pedal or go straight into that bollard, and then everyone's coming down. We saw riders were frustrated that on dangerous corners, there was no padding on the barriers. So if there was indeed a crash, they'd slide straight into the metal, and that could cause severe injury. If there were whistlemen, they weren't attentive. There was no prior warning for major like road changes as well. Like, one rider said that it didn't matter how many recons you did of the course. On race day, it was like 2 lanes were open, then 1 lane was open, then the other side of the road was open, and then the other side of the road was open. Like, you couldn't predict where the race was actually going to go, and it was very sketchy. Also, a very nervous peloton as well. Some of the Dutch riders said that like it's no different to racing in the Netherlands, but the issue is that there was no the level of protection and I guess oversight they've got over those issues in the Netherlands is much higher than they saw at this race. And it's a shame because, as Abby said, every single rider really enjoyed the atmosphere that Denmark brought to the race. And we are lacking races in that part of the world. So we do need a race up there. And it is a beautiful part of the world to have it. I like one rider in particular was like, we just want to give the organization the chance to improve. So feedback has been given. We had CPA representatives on the ground there, and I talked to a few of them. They had riders come up to them during the race complaining about the lack of safety. In fact, they even went back to the commissaire car and said, look, this is not good enough. You need to send a car ahead of the race to start closing down roads and dropping people off to actually at these like markings on the road where these bollards and poles and such are, because we're in danger here. Like, this is really bad. So they are aware of it. The CPA representatives did feed that feedback back. But I'm not sure if this is where you want me to go into my rant about the irony of the UCI, but I just don't see that the UCI.
Well, yeah.
Well, just on the heels of the handlebar fiasco, this is just kind of it couldn't have come at like a more ironic time, a race like this, than the whole last couple weeks or that last week where we've all been talking about how making sure that the handlebars are not too narrow is in the name of safety. Like you couldn't write a script like for this race to come around at this time. And I think like one of the biggest, yes, the women races with more road furniture in Belgium and the Netherlands, but because this race is in a new-ish area for like a large bike race like this, a World Tour level bike race in Denmark, and especially because Denmark is like going through this boom of cycling where they've got a tour winner, they've got Mess Peterson, they've got, Sile, they've got all of these incredible Danish riders coming up right now that are bringing a lot of eyes to the sport. But Denmark is still relatively new to the professional cycling atmosphere. And so there were also like people standing on the medians who were spectators trying to take photos of the race, which is incredibly dangerous for the spectators as well. Like my husband pointed out to me that if it's a place that's not used to having a bike race of this caliber, where especially as fast as this one was, which I think it was like 42 kilometer average for 151 kilometers. So it was like a wicked fast race. A lot of it had a tailwind as well. So that made it even, added another layer to it. But if you go to a place that they're not used to having a race like this, they're just not used to how the peloton is going to navigate the road furniture. And in Belgium and the Netherlands, they've had a billion races. They know how to handle it, and the spectators know as well. So I think it's something that they can improve on. It's not like it's not like when you have races that are unsafe that have been going on forever, like the Giro, for example, pre-RCS, when you're like, hey, they should know better. This is a race where like clearly the organizers want to invest in the sport. And so, yeah, it's not really like berating of the organizers, more just like, hey, like we want this to be better next year.
The UCI is at fault here because like one of the criteria for being a World Tour race, a women's World Tour race, is the event has to have already existed for at least 2 editions to make sure that they are adhering to the criteria, including safety measures. So like this is the first edition of this race and it's already World Tour, and we've spoken about this before in like, how does this happen when the rules are that to avoid these kind of circumstances?
I wonder if it was linked, the UCI mobility, is it Mobility and Sustainability Conference? No, UCI Mobility and Bike City Forum was in Copenhagen that weekend. So it was Friday, Saturday. I almost wanted to combine the two, but it didn't work out. But that's a really good point, Gracie, that this was immediately put up to a World Tour status for all the women. Was it for the men as well? Or was it just pro for the men? Yeah. But the thing is, it's not the first time Denmark has hosted a really big race. I mean, the Worlds was in Copenhagen in 2011, and the Tour de France was there in 2022. I think the Grand Depart.
Yeah.
Yeah, Gracie was
the
there
first
on the
3
ground.
stages, I think. Yeah.
But normally, I think like so maybe it was just assumed in a sense. I'm not taking any blame away from the UCI, but I think normally a procedure when you're going to host such an event, and I just know this through Carly Taylor, who is doing the Women's Tour Down Under, they do like they'll come over to Europe and go to certain races and have discussions with the race organization and just see how they organize a race, like from the start to the end, and have those discussions around like safety, going out on the course and seeing how they organize the course and those sorts of things. So like it would have paid for them to maybe have come, I don't know, and seen Bruges de Pana, which is also a sprint event or something like that, or just to learn from other experienced races, because that's how you learn these things, and you just get a sense of how a race is organized, because everything that happened was very amateuristic.
I would expect there to be like a rubric, a criteria rubric that you have to pass. And if not, there should be, you should have a passing grade as a race organization to be awarded World Tour status. You should have a 2-year contract where you're not World Tour, but if you pass with flying colours in that first year, you can get promoted in year 2. But if you don't, you've got another year to get that passing grade again. So I'm just like, it's just frustrating when you don't see that happening in practice because of other agendas probably happening.
Yeah, I think I wrote about this in the newsletter. So the newsletter and the Will Talk will be nicely aligned this week. I was chatting with a friend of mine and she was like, this is a classic, like the handlebar, the gear ratio, and then you've got the Copenhagen Sprint event. It's a classic bait and switch by the UCI. They're like, they're showing that they're doing something by, widening handlebars, creating that minimum of the gear ratios, etc., or maximum of the gear ratios. But in reality, like, the responsibility and the accountability is not on them, and the financial responsibility is not on them. They basically put it to the riders and to the teams and to the manufacturers of the equipment, whereas what will require the UCI to invest financial resources, etc., will be to implement that rubric that you're talking about, Gracie. But I just don't see them doing that. I don't think they've got the desire to have that kind of accountability on them. I think they like to put it on to other people.
The crazy thing about the gear restrictions is they actually did like a survey for the riders last year where they asked the riders about the gear restrictions, and almost all the riders were like, no, it's not going to make racing any safer because it's going to make us more bunched up. And they're still going to try to implement it.
What I'd like to know is who gets to be in these rooms of decision making, and is that a nice representation of the sport? And I would say, from an assumption, no, it's not. And, I know from personal experience that Iris never, ever got invited to the meetings about stuff like this. And it's so frustrating when you're trying to represent some, if not all, of the peloton in collaboration with other stakeholders, and you're not just being ignored, you're being intentionally uninvited to these things. So yeah, like the cyclist alliance and the CPA need to have people in those rooms. There needs to be more women in those rooms, even if they're UCI employees. Like it's just like, it's so stupid in 2025 that they've got such big oversights.
Well, wasn't Mick Rogers like the head of the safety council, whatever it's called, for quite a few years? I mean, I know he's with Little Trek now, so maybe can try and ask him that question on the ground at the Tour de France Femme, Georgie.
Yes, I can chase. I'll be chasing a lot of people down. I'll be demanding people speak to me.
R.I.P. to all the people that you've decided to chase down. She's
got like a target, like a hit list.
No, Matt and I are meeting to craft our hit list. It's in the works. But
like, if you need my assistance with just putting the microphone in people's faces,
Loren walks up to anyone. It's really crazy to watch.
I think I'm pretty good at talking paint off a wall if need be. But I think the issue will be getting into I'm not very subtle, so it's getting into the places where I'm probably not meant to be.
You have a badge for that.
I know, and we're going to
you have a badge.
Social in uniform.
No, I mean, I think this whole thing has just been really frustrating to watch, not only as fans of the sport, people who are close to the riders, who want the best for the riders. All of us obviously were riders, so we have a special sweet spot in our hearts for the peloton in general, and wanting it to be a safe place. And it's just like, God, it's just so frustrating to watch the UCI I said it last week, put a leaf on a bullet hole. Like they just aren't doing anything to make the sport safer. And I don't think that they actually know how to make the sport safer. Like, I don't think that they've actually sat down and been like, how do we make the sport of cycling safer? I think that they're like, someone gets an idea into their heads and they're like, oh, we should make handlebars wider. That's definitely going to make the sport safer, and it's just so freaking frustrating to watch, especially when cycling is growing at such a rapid rate. The women's peloton is faster now than it's ever been. And it now is the time when we need to find some kind of real change to make the sport safer, because it's only going to get faster, and it's only going to get harder to keep the riders safe. One of the points brought up by one of the riders that Georgie reached out to is it's not only that the race itself wasn't organized in a safe way, but it was also that the riders themselves are more willing to take risks now than ever. I mean, there's more on the line for any result now than there ever has been, with the rise of professional contracts, with there's, teams folding, teams growing. There's just so much movement in the sport of women's cycling. And so riders who feel the pressure to be on a world tour team and be making a certain amount, or like have it be their livelihood, or just, really want to win, are taking more risks than they ever have.
Yeah. I think that's that's chronic of the peloton this year, as we've seen. Like the article that I wrote about risk a couple of months ago explores that, but I think we really see it in races such as the Copenhagen Sprint. One of the riders that I interviewed has named it the most dangerous race of 2025, which is wholly ironic given that it's come after this week of regulatory change by the UCI to increase safety. So, like, I think the riders, we talked about last week, there needs to be a unification of voices to actually for the UCI to focus their energies into things that are actually useful, not just give like I talked in the newsletter about, like, I lost count of the amount of times the UCI would come up to our team 10 minutes before we're rolling to the start and say, oh, by the way, there's like a danger warning on the first 30 Ks of this race. Be careful. And so then, of course, the team DS is going to be like, oh yeah, girls, just make sure you're at the front. It's like every team's getting that instruction. And it's like races like that, but even if you're in top 10 wheels, you're still like, are you only just scraping through the shit? And that's just down to course design. The reason that it's that dangerous.
And meanwhile, they're trying to take away the radios, which is the only way.
You're completely right. It's and we've got comments now from quite frankly relics of the sport saying take away the radios, which is just they have a duty of care to these riders. You're on the start line. You're in like the wafer thin clothing. Like if you come down, you are a crayon on that road. And the
mental image.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, but like, but wow,
Georgie. Thinking of my elbow.
Like, yeah, we've all been there. It fucking sucks. Sorry. But I don't think they appreciate that. I think they just see eyeballs on the sport generate revenue. This is going to be an exciting start. Like the fact that they're implementing these safety measures is just to say that they're implementing safety measures. It's for nothing other than that.
Was that your rant? Because I was starting to get worried that I derailed you from your rant.
That's all right. That was my rant, and I've got more in the tank though.
As always. I am curious if any of you had heard feedback from the day after in the men's race, if they'd changed anything.
That's what I was curious about, if overnight they rushed to change something, because I didn't watch the men's race and I don't recall seeing anything, passing by.
I saw some quotes from riders in the men's race saying they were legitimately scared. Okay. Like they haven't been scared like that before.
Yeah, I was going to say. Yeah. There was also, I think there was maybe just one really, really bad crash in the men's race, or really big crash in the men's race. But the general consensus that I heard was that, yeah, it was the men were equally as disgruntled and angry about the way that the lack of safety in the men's edition as well.
I mean, you just had to look at the replay of the race on the highlights, and some of those crashes, like Eleanor Baxter was on the ground, like grasping, I think it was her shoulder. Georgia Baker is like in the fetal position on the ground in a really fast corner. Like, you've got these riders who are coming down and they're staying down because, as we said, the race was extremely quick. And I want to give the organization the benefit of the doubt, but the responsibility needs to be given to the UCI for this in elevating this race to a World Tour status beyond its maturity.
I mean, those like meter high poles with the cone on top, like that to me is one of the scariest things ever. I had a rider teammate who was almost paralyzed because of one of those poles in Norway.
Wow.
Like they really need to. That's just like a
It beggars belief that they don't have like the organizers and the UCI don't have this appreciation for the danger of the sport these days.
I have a question. Like when these stages are approved, maybe you guys know more information about this, or we have to get someone who organizes a race like Carly or Nettie on. But like these courses have to be approved, I know, by the UCI and checked, right?
Yeah, Safer is in charge of that, I'm pretty sure.
But they don't get to see it in the closed race situation. But I would assume that they sit down and in that safety meeting with all the people that are involved with that element of the race. Like, you know, this corner here has been identified as a high risk corner, and therefore we're going to have this, and this in place. Isn't that how it would be run? Like, and wouldn't that person from the UCI sit there and go, oh, actually, no, I don't think there's good enough support for.
But Loren, I mean, I think Abby was laughing because my face has subtitles when you mentioned Safer, but that's the same working group that implemented the handlebar policy and the gear ratio policy, and said they measured every single handlebar at three World Tour races last year in the women's peloton, and not one, maybe one was below 400 millimeters, and it will make the pelotons. Everyone will have more control of their bike, and it'll slow everyone down. I think don't put too much credence in that committee.
They need to build back that trust somehow. So they need to actually go and do a good job.
Well, there was a similar lengthy discussion last year after that really bad crash in the men's race. I think it was maybe the Dauphiné, but I don't remember which one, where Jonas came down and he was really badly injured, but there was a lot of riders that came down on a fast descent, and there was a like ditch, a concrete ditch right next to the descent. And there was a lot of chatter online from local cyclists in the area who said that, yeah, that part is notorious for having slick roads, especially if there's been any moisture. And that in theory, one of the jobs of the UCI or Safer is to preview the courses before the riders go on it, to make sure that there is a level of safety. And I think when Safer was announced, that was one of the things that they said, is that one of their jobs is to like make sure the course is safe. And I think one of the blowback from one of the criticisms of that was that it needs to be an ex-professional rider who only retired a short time ago, so that they know how the peloton rides, because things are changing so fast, who like previews the course in a car, on a bike, whatever, before the race happens, to see where the pinch points are, where are going to be the most dangerous parts of every race. So if that is indeed happening and Copenhagen Sprint made it through, especially if what Georgie was saying about like the lanes changing and everything, it's just like mind-boggling. Like it's just like something terrible is going to happen, and it's going to force the UCI to do something to make racing safer, and that's what we want to avoid. Like the measures need to be put in place so that doesn't happen.
Yeah,
like, it's not good enough. Like shitty things have already happened, like that could have been prevented. And I don't think the measures that are currently being put in place they're not good enough.
Well, we're all in agreement there.
Georgie touched on what happened at the Worlds in 2024, and that immediately, brought to mind for me this year, we're going to Rwanda. And I'm just a bit concerned. I know there are a lot of concerns around that race to begin with for other reasons, but I think when we're thinking of safety right now, like the UCI is going to have to lift their game before then, because we can't afford to have any more tragedies on the road. And yeah, to the point about Copenhagen, that's here in Europe. It's very easy to have had regular meetings with the race organizer and figure out these safety elements. I don't know what's happening with Rwanda and how often the UCI are going over there to talk about certain things. I mean, we know there have been some riders that have gone and done course recon. Even actually, the two people from my bike shop here were doing a bike packing trip and decided to ride the course, and they just said it was going to be absolute chaos.
And that's the pinnacle of the sport. That's the World Championship.
Yeah. And I don't think there's anything, we don't have anything against trying to internationalize the World Championships. Like, it's always really fun when it goes to different places. I know, like, when it was in the US, that was a huge deal for American teams, especially when it still had the trade team time trial, which they should definitely bring back in. Since we're talking directly to the UCI, can you please bring back the trade team time trial? Thank you so much. But when it goes to places like this and like, yeah, gets to move around for Australia, it was a huge deal as well. So it's cool that we're going to be going somewhere like pretty new for cycling, and somewhere that has been growing in terms of cycling. There's some pretty incredible superstars coming out of Africa in general in cycling, and it's really cool to watch. Big fan of Biniam Girmay. Like, I just think he's great. So it's really cool. But yeah, when you watch the Tour of Rwanda from earlier this year that was canceled mid-stage, I believe, on the final stage, and had a lot of problems, it does cause some concern ahead of the Worlds. And if you're looking at the UCI right now and the problems that they're trying to solve in the way that they're solving them, it doesn't really instill much confidence in how they're handling the safety in Rwanda before the Worlds.
And I don't want to put the blame necessarily on the race organizers at all, because to your point, Abby, like, we want to bring cycling to all parts of the world, and I think it's really important that there is a spotlight on these countries, and that the locals get to experience this incredible event. But it is on the UCI, and they need to ensure that the race is at the standard of what we see at, like, the Tour de France.
One thing I would also want to bring up in this conversation is, what if they don't pull things up to a standard where we think is appropriate for the World Championships? Say you go over with your national team and you ride the course and you all think, oh shit, like, this is going to be chaos and carnage. What do? You're going to have to go and talk to all the other countries pretty quickly, I think, because most teams will be there for maybe a week beforehand. There'll maybe be some there a little bit earlier, but generally you're really only there for that week leading into the race. Maybe some of the time trialers are there earlier, but like, you got to really rally pretty quickly if you want anything to be changed at that late stage. So I think that's what I want my message to be too, is like, yes, we want the UCI to step up and make sure that this is a world-class event and that we're going to prevent any more tragedies from happening. But failing that, what is the onus then on the riders and the teams and the team managements? Because it shouldn't be on them, but it might be. So they need to make sure that they make decisions quickly. And I guess some of the bigger countries do have some responsibility there in being the voice for the whole peloton.
Yeah. Unfortunately, it's like countries, there are like certain countries that really take safety into account, and there are others that don't. And getting an entire peloton to agree to something where every single person in the peloton has their own goals and their own agenda is a lot harder than the UCI just saying. Like, I have more confidence in the UCI actually coming up with some list of rules to make racing safer, or doing their due diligence when it comes to a race, than the whole peloton agreeing on something, which is a huge problem. I mean, not even the whole peloton is aware that the Cyclist Alliance exists, which just devastates me to this day. Like, I remember I got coffee with a rider once, like maybe a year ago, and I was asking them about the rider survey, and they'd never heard of the Cyclist Alliance. And that came down to their team not wanting their riders to know that it was an option for them, because they knew that the team, there were certain things in the contract, or that the rider would have some kind of support outside of the team, and that put them potentially in a tricky spot in their eyes, and gave power to the rider, and they didn't want that to be an option. So they didn't allow their riders to become members of the Cyclist Alliance, and a bunch of them just didn't even know that it was a thing. Georgie's pissed.
How can you tell? I don't get mad very often. I think, I don't think the riders are quite frankly aware of the union activity in the peloton, and that's also exemplary of the fact that I didn't know that my prize money went to the CPA, and the CPA is meant to be representing me, but it's the same CPA that is in the pocket of the UCI that implements these bullshit safety regulations. How is that representative of the peloton at all? And how is it that my money that I risk my life getting with my team then goes to a union that doesn't represent my interest?
And why the CPA and not the TCA?
Because the CPA is the union that the UCI can control. Yeah, the UCI can control the CPA and they can't control TCA, which is why they didn't invite Iris to come to any of these meetings, which just continues to highlight the whole problem with the system and with the UCI in general.
Yeah, bit of a hand in glove type situation.
Yeah, again, it's a bait and switch. It's like, we have a union, you've got representation, but actually they work for us.
Yeah. And the way that the voting works with the CPA, the president of the CPA, means that, I mean, the women's is maybe different, I'm not sure, but the way that the men's is set up, it's like whoever represents the CPA is very rarely going to be someone who is actually like fully committed to bettering everything for the riders. And I thought that was Adam Hansen. I have my questions now after everything with the handlebars, but
I don't think I need to go back and like inform myself, but I think they actually don't represent every country as well, the way that it was originally set up. One of the reasons why they take a small percentage of everyone's prize money is it was intended to go into a rider pension scheme, and that doesn't really exist anymore. I think that male pros might get a small lump sum when they retire if they meet certain criteria, but I don't know if that still exists, but I'm pretty sure that the women don't receive that pension type of thing.
They still take my money.
But one of the toughest parts of the Cyclist Alliance was trying to get people to sign up for a €50 per year membership fee, which is like nothing it's a drop in the ocean compared to all the other stuff. But it's interesting, the psychology of it, isn't it? The membership fee versus not realizing that you're slowly having money trickled away from you in another way.
And not realizing the benefits, Gracie, because when I first moved to Belgium, I joined a union here with my very, very first job. And I think the membership was like €70 a year. But like the amount that they helped me through COVID was amazing to make sure that I got all the right benefits and everything like that. So it was understanding that, this could be really useful if I got into a situation where my employer just tried to fire me for no good reason. It's actually quite hard to fire people here in Belgium. But yeah, not understanding the value, and to Abby's previous point, the fact that some riders still aren't educated about who the TCA and what they are doing to represent women within the peloton is crazy.
Well, yeah, lastly, the benefits are really good if you're a TCA member, like the info that you get, the support you get along the way. But if you are not a TCA member and something really bad happens to you, you can still ask for help. So I want to make that clear that they'll support you through something that's serious, even if you're not a member.
I've directed some young riders here in Belgium that have experienced some dodgy things with club teams and Conti teams, and just said, if you need support, like I'm not the person that's going to be able to guide you through this, go to the TCA.
I mean, in terms of racing, which obviously was also something that happened at Copenhagen Sprint.
Finish the race. You might be surprised.
Yeah, but actually that crash with 8.9 kilometers to go,
really
changed the whole. I mean, Weber's, I think, would have won regardless, but the fact is that some people missed out then on even having that opportunity to sprint, and to the point that we don't have that many races on the calendar that are pure sprinters races. It's just, a missed opportunity. Like when I saw Georgia Baker go down, I was like, shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's also draft tape. That's fine.
Yeah, that too.
I mean, I think like one of the racing points that I thought maybe we would touch on was just that Lorena Wiebes is like, how do we beat her? We've talked about it before. And I think we all believed that there was a possibility, but it's just looking less and less likely this year. But I think that that's something that we will be able to talk about again in the future, because I don't foresee her being dethroned in a sprint anytime soon the way that she is winning sprints. I mean, she won, like, there was daylight between her and Balsamo, who is like another rider who I really want to talk about at some point, and I'm sure we will, because she's like consistently second best. She's very, very good this year, but it's like not really showing unless Wiebes isn't there. Yeah, and then you have like Charlotte O'Cole, who, you know, I was really hoping that she would be coming around in this sprint to challenge Wiebes and make some of the tour stages more interesting. She obviously won the first 2 stages of the tour last year, which kicked us off on a really good note for the tour, without having to write Wiebes wins again for the first 2 stages of the tour last year. But she's just really lacking this year, and yeah, didn't even come on the podium this year. And I think a lot of that had to do with positioning in the sprint and how she timed her sprint. Was happy to see Consoni up there. I didn't know she was on the star list, because yet again the star list was published and it was not correct. I'm just freaking makes me so upset, but we don't have to rant about that today. I'll rant about that another day. For sure it'll happen again.
On a positive note, in terms of how do we beat Lorena, I think Cool said something good in her interview, in that, you know, she didn't win a race before the tour last year either. I don't think she's had a good run this year for her form, so I don't think she's like looking as good as she has in the past. But I like that she still has hope, and it gives us hope that there's still going to be some good storylines going forward. And, you know, it's still a month away, the tour, so that's a significant amount of time to still keep sharpening the sword or transition out of a certain phase of your racing or training block as well. So, like I think we've mentioned the last week or two, you can only read so much into some of the results at the moment because of just the way that people have been preparing for different goals.
Just on the tour and sprinters, how many stages, I don't know if anyone has looked into it super depth, but how many stages do we think Lorena could go for? The first 3?
Let me look.
Because that will be a storyline, is how they're going to manage expectations on SD Works between GC.
Definitely 2 stages. Yeah.
Yeah. And then a couple of hilly stages, and we know Lorena can get up there if she's looked after.
The first stage will be interesting because it ends on like a really short, like punchy climb. It's 1.7K, 6.2% the final climb. And the second stage is also on like a little bit of an uphill, but I think it's an uphill that like Wiebes or Voss could take, to be honest. I don't think it's like really significant. I don't think she can win the first stage, but her climbing has come so good this year that maybe she can. But stages 3 and 4, I think, are like the 2 most straightforward sprint stages we've got, and they're still relatively lumpy. Like there's really not any flat stages this year. 3 is the flattest stage.
I don't believe in a sprint stage at the Tour de France Femme. The amount of times I was told, "Oh, today's a sprint day," and then I end up like having like 350 TSS for that day.
Women's
that sounds more like the Giro, Georgie.
I'm still traumatized. Me and my 7,500 calories a day, I'm still traumatized. Oh man. Right though.
Well,
that's a plus.
Do you want to hit us with some good positive vibes with your Minute of Madness, which is on the topic of the importance of fun?
Yeah, because it has been a fun episode. I enjoy ranting from time to time.
Can I give you 2 minutes to rant, or did you practice?
I've done prep.
Oh,
so I did practice, but I've got notes down, so I think I can fit it into 60 seconds.
Okay, ready?
All right. Well, athletes, before we became an athlete, we were definitely a human first, and no doubt that everyone had fun when they started their sport. And one of the best parts of being an athlete is being an athlete in the wild, getting the lycra off and getting the real clothes on and being able to express oneself. Being a cyclist especially, it's a bit boring. You've got the helmet problem where you whack on the helmet and the sunglasses and wear the same thing every single day. There's no imagination with your wardrobe. Sure, when winter comes around, you get to pull out that glorious gabba or that long sleeve that you've been dying to get on all year round. But usually it's the same colour tone. So if it doesn't suit you, you're up shit creek. So when you off the bike, you actually get a chance to express yourself. So that's a bit of fun. And it was lovely to see after the Copenhagen Sprint, all the riders getting out on the town and actually having fun with each other, because we also know that off the bike and in the real world is where real culture is made. So I was very happy to see that. Eating, sleeping and repeating bikes makes for a boring life, and especially nowadays where we need moments of unconditional fun.
You did awesome and agreed with everything. I think one of the best things out of Copenhagen Sprint was just the social media of riders after the race. And this Minute of Madness was brought to you by the Instagram story of, I think it was Loretta Hansen, who took a selfie with the whole Little Trek team. And the like variety of style.
Yeah, Clara Capote's cowboy boots. Holy shit.
Cowboy boots and leopard top, like.
Yeah, that's hot.
Out on the town with that. And it just was such a great photo and such a great representation of like how there are so many different women that make up the peloton. And yeah, we all wear the same, they all wear the same clothes every day, but when you get them out of the lycra, it is just this incredible mix of human beings in the women's peloton.
It's like seeing a teacher in the wild. It's like, well, that's strange.
I was going to compare it to watching a dog walk on its hind legs in the text that I sent to you guys. And then I was like, that sounds weird.
No, I don't think it's that weird.
It's nice. And you don't really get an opportunity in the season that much to like spend a night with your teammates. That's like after a race. And that's pretty fun.
Places.
But it happens. Yeah,
like
Copenhagen's a very cool place to do it.
Yeah,
I've actually done that in Copenhagen as well with some teammates, and that was pretty cool.
It's a very fashionable city, so I feel like you really can lean into your like Vogue, you know?
Yeah.
It's the worst though when you're like not planned and you don't have an outfit and you only have your team kit. I've walked down Rodeo Drive in LA in a tracksuit. It was devastating.
Oh,
Pretty Woman, baby. Pretty Woman. There you go. You and Julia Roberts are the same.
Rodeo Drive. No, that was fully planned. I'm putting it on the list for next year, even if it's like not the most important race to go to. I think I'm going to go just for that reason, to have a weekend in Copenhagen. Nix can come.
It's a bit
cute.
cute.
Be my assistant.
You're +1.
Yeah, I don't know how I'll put that into the expenses.
I think Abby's asking you out, Loren. Just be careful.
Well, I think that's it for us for today. We will be back with Matt's episode next week, and also at some point preview of the Giro. We've got the Giro coming up, which is very exciting, and even more exciting, daily diaries, daily podcasts from the Giro with myself, Loren, Georgie, and a couple really exciting guests that are going to come. One of them is Cosmo Catalano. If you're familiar with the How the Race Was Won podcast, there's going to be a nice little Wheel Talk How the Race Was Won crossover. So I'm looking forward to that. Plus, we've got some really exciting riders signed up, including a duo of riders from Little Trek, Spratty and Neve Fisher-Black. I couldn't decide which one I wanted. They said I could have either, and I said, can I just have both? So those will be really great audio diaries. I'm looking forward to that. Let's wrap up this episode with obsessions. And I think our talk about fashion leads perfectly into my obsession, which is the color of the summer is butter yellow, my personal favorite color. And I am just so excited that there are so many brands coming out with like butter yellow summer clothes. I've been totally obsessed with it all week.
You're the one out of 4 in this conversation.
You can wear butter yellow.
Actually, I did one of those color analysis things. Like, you know, you get spammed on Instagram for like you send in like selfies and they give you like a color analysis. And I am a true summer and I can pull off butter yellow.
I think I'm a deep wood or like a, I don't know. I think I did one. I'm in like the autumn spec. I wear a lot of black.
Yeah. When in doubt, wear black.
Yeah.
My mom wouldn't allow me to wear black growing up because she was afraid that I would be goth if I wore black. So we weren't allowed to wear black in my house.
And now
And then
you're covered in tattoos.
My sister even worse, so it really backfired on her.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's my obsession, is the color of the summer, butter yellow. You'll find me wearing it at the playground during the Tour de France Femme.
I'm a bit of a sucker for a trend, and I was thinking the other day that I need to go buy something in that color, and then I said to myself, voice of reason, Gracie, it doesn't suit you. Don't buy it just because it's in fashion. That's maturity. I'm growing up.
That is maturity. Damn. All right. What are your guys' obsessions?
Mine is a book called Broken Country by Claire Leslie Hall. So it's from the Reese's Book Club. I like to go through her list and pick out books, and actually most of them have been pretty good, I have to say. And it's just, a sweeping love story set in the 60s in countryside England. And yeah, I'm not going to go into too much detail. It's just really good. It's an easy read and really enjoyable. If you have kids, there is like, the storyline with the main character, and her son passes and you find out why. But every time it like touches on that subject, it's like a little dagger to the heart. But it's a beautiful story, and it's like a bit of a thriller too. And I'm not sure, I've got probably 50 pages to go where it's going to go. So someone is murdered and you're just not quite sure who it is.
Ooh,
It's
fun.
yeah, a love triangle. It's good.
Love that.
Yeah, we're Reese Witherspoon fans. She knows what's
she's
good.
so
She knows what's
good.
up. What did you
Yeah.
send in the group chat recently? Are they doing an Alona?
Oh, yeah. Is it the Alona Mar docu-series?
Docu-series. It was a
That's
matter of
gonna be an
time.
obsession,
So
won't
excited.
it, when it comes out?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
She was just in Europe at the Cannes Film Festival, not Cannes. Sorry.
Yeah, she did some like good fit checks.
Cannes. So Australian. I should know better. Every time I
Wait.
pronounce a French word around my husband, because, half the country speaks French here, he just looks at me and goes,
Yeah, Betty loves you.
My obsession is Wikipedia. I love going down a rabbit hole. Sometimes I'm like, I want to know more about that, and I just go to Wikipedia because it's not a source that you would use if you were doing university assignment, but it's a nice source if you want to just know something really quickly. And I spent a lot of time learning about Hecate, the goddess of lots of things,
Go on.
because I
What
like
is she?
witchy stuff too. She is the goddess of witchcraft and the moon and liminal
Georgie, naughty.
spaces like doorways and the crossroads, and also has been related to Maiden Mother Crone.
How did you
Yeah,
land
lots
on
of
this
cool
topic?
stuff.
Just out of curiosity.
Solstice.
My other solstice. No, my other obsessions is witchy stuff anyway. So sometimes I just like go down into a rabbit hole of like one thing, and that was it on Wikipedia. And then the other thing I like about Wikipedia is you're clicking on everything else in the article that is blue. So I was like reading about Jungian psychology and like all of this cool stuff. So that was
you
a
would love
nice
this
way to
segment.
use some time.
Here in Belgium, I think it's the ideal world. That's what it translates to, the show. They have this segment where you have 1 minute. You've got to get to, you have a starting page and then you have to get to another page, and you've basically got to read through and click. It's all through Wikipedia, and you have 1 minute, and it's how many clicks. Who has the least amount of clicks wins. It's really fun.
Cool. That's super
Oh,
cool.
yeah.
Gracie, I have a topic for you to Wikipedia and fall down a rabbit hole of, and that is Ligua, which is the biggest Latvian holiday, and it's very witchy, so you would enjoy it.
Is that why you were wearing those things, or is that
The flower crowns. No, the flower crowns are Ligua.
okay? Because
Yeah,
my
send me a
colleague
link.
from
I'll love
Sweden
it.
was celebrating Midsummer on Thursday or Friday. When was Midsummer?
Yeah, these us countries that are up in the dark zone, we really love a midsummer solstice, summer solstice type festival. Yeah, we don't do a maypole in Latvia, but we do. There are a lot of bonfires.
My obsession it'll be a short one. Talk show host by Radiohead.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah.
I was just trying to think the other day what my favorite Radiohead album is. I can't even remember anymore. I have to go back and re-listen to that stuff again. But that's a good one. That's a good song.
Yeah. That and like House of Cards is also a good one. But my obsession is Winter Solstice, which I've had my first Winter Solstice in 3 years, and I forgot how cold Melbourne winter gets. And I'm just a big softie.
But how good is Winter Fashion though?
Oh yeah, I mean, I love a layer. I love black. I love a layer, and I love so.
And in Melbourne, you actually get to wear a proper coat. Like up in Queensland, I was like, "What's a coat?" I'll never forget the first time I went to New York at 16. We had to buy coats when we were there because the puffer jacket I had was not enough for minus 20 degrees or whatever it was when it was snowing.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah.
All right. Cool. Well, that's it. Thanks everyone for listening to us get all worked up, and we will be back next week.
This episode was produced, edited, and mixed by Will Jones at Red Bricks Media.